here for another episode of our podcast. And today, what I would like to share with you is my recipe for a very simple dish in all reality, but everybody likes it, and a lot of people ask me my recipe, so there it is. It's my pasta fagioli, or pasta and beans soup. There are really two ways to make it. One would be with the dry beans, which is obviously way longer. And then there's a quicker version with the canned beans. So if you do use the dry beans, remember to soak them at least overnight. Up here in Reno, given the dryness, I actually soak them 24 hours just to be safe. And if you want to soften the beans skin a little bit more, you can add some baking soda to your soaking water. Then you drain the beans, rinse them, and then you cook them with rosemary, sage, carrot, onion, celery, whichever things, herbs, vegetables you like to add to your beans. This being said, when I make pasta fagioli, I make, if I don't already have it, I make a vegetable broth with 1 or 2 carrots, about 1 onion, and a couple potatoes. Then I also add a couple of peeled Samarzano tomatoes, rosemary, sage, thyme if you have it, or marjoram, and you cook until your vegetables are actually soft. Then I get the vegetables, put them in a blender, immersion blender if it's not a big quantity, or a bigger blender if it's a bigger quantity, and some of the beans I cooked before. Or if I use canned beans, I just drain and rinse the canned beans, and a little bit of those beans go into the blender. Then you make a cream out of it with a little bit of the cooking broth, and then you start cooking your soup. So for pasta fagioli, I generally use borlotti beans, again, whether dried or canned. If you use canned ones, try to find beans that have the shortest list of ingredients possible. Ideally, it would be only water, salt, and beans. That's because salt is a preservative, and the vast majority of the salt, in all reality, you drain away and rinse. And that is the most natural way of preserving beans. And then I use, again, generally, ditalini or tubettini, depending on the company, depending on the place they come from. They may have a different name, but pretty much that's what they are. So they're tiny tubes. And then I put the broth back to a boil, add the salt. Hardly ever I add salt when I cook the beans, just because salt tends to harden the skin of the beans, which literally counters what the baking soda does. So I add the salt afterwards. If I'm cooking them for a salad, I add the salt when I make the salad. If I'm making the soup, at that point, once they're cooked, I add the salt. So bring the broth back to a boil, add salt, add the pasta and the cream you obtained by blending those vegetables, and cook until the pasta is almost al dente. Before it reaches al dente, you want to add the whole beans, because otherwise they will cook too much and dissolve into your soup. But if you want to have the beans, then those, since they are pre-cooked, you have to add them almost at the very end. It is very, very important that you stir your pasta almost constantly. That's because the thickness of the cream you're adding to it to make it dense will actually make it very easy for the pasta and this dense part, creamy part, to stick to the bottom of your pan. And you don't want that to happen, otherwise then it burns and there goes your soup. Once the pasta is almost al dente, as I said, you add the beans, and then when the pasta is al dente, you pull it out, you pull the soup out, divide it into however many bowls you have, you serve people with, and you drizzle with some very, very good extra virgin olive oil. I never add the olive oil when I cook the soup because I would rather taste it at the end, but then everyone has its own preferences. But this is the way I make it. No Parmigiano on top because it would cover the flavor of everything else. So if you can avoid the Parmigiano. You like cannellini beans better than borlotti beans? Go for them. You don't have tubettini, break up some spaghetti and you'll be good to go. Actually, you could also use rice, but it wouldn't be pasta and fagioli anymore. It would be rice and fagioli, but still, it can be done. So, what can I say? If you use the dry beans, it will be a longer process. Sometimes I use actually the cooking liquid of the beans as the base for the pasta and fagioli because it's even richer, but that's entirely up to you. As I said, sage and rosemary generally are the two best herbs for this. Thyme and marjoram work phenomenally as well. I wouldn't use anything like parsley or celery or basil for that matter. I never liked that type of combination of flavor. But again, cooking is a matter of personal taste. So if you like it, go for it. We will see you soon for the next episode. Ciao!